and I come from a family for whom social justice is very important. We were always taught to do what we could to help who we could. So I guess that was sort of pounded into me in a good way when I was younger. When I personally came out as a transgender person at the end of the last century and started living my life after transition, I met more and more trans people who hadn't been as lucky about their transition as I had. When I came out to my family, I didn't even lose the family members I wanted to lose. And a lot of people don't have that. A lot of people lose their family. A lot of people lose their parents. A lot of people lose their kids. I have friends who haven't seen their children in years because a bigoted judge ruled that they were unfit just because they were transgender, or a bigoted spouse, bigoted and bitter spouse, I should say, fought for custody just because of the transgender issue. Transgender people can make fabulous, amazing parents, but sometimes they're not allowed to be, and that bothered me a lot. And then I saw people who, just because they were transgender, were suddenly victims of really horrible violence. And in 2002, there were 2 young trans women in DC who were murdered, who were a little younger than my own son, and that was really shocking to me. I mean, I knew that happened, but there was something about that just sort of hit me in my gut.
Several organizations marched tonight from the First Presbyterian Church to the state capitol in memory of transgender people who lost their lives to violence.
I'll never not tell someone I'm trans, unless I'm like in the deep south or something at a rest stop or whatever, and I feel like it would endanger my life. But I definitely like try to be as open as possible about it, and if people have questions, I answer questions. Anyway, I often think like, because I've been touring for like 4 or 5 years, and I'm like this really sensitive Pisces type, and like when I was a kid, whenever we would do something really exciting, I would come home and throw up, because I would get like too excited, and I'd be like, oh my gosh, I had a great time. So I kind of wonder if I'm cut out for touring, because like I really get like, even though I don't really get nervous about performing or anything, I get really, even like this was a little uncomfortable for me, like just meeting with someone that I didn't know, and then all of a sudden finding myself like in this strange apartment in the East Village, like, how did I get here? But it's okay. I mean, because, like a half hour into it, I feel like relatively at ease. I feel like I sort of fell into playing. Well, I think a couple of things happened. I think that after a certain point, that people stopped perceiving me as being male, and then it sort of became a non-issue. And I don't know, like vocally, I still think that my voice probably sounds more on the male side, but I get different feedback from people, and I think when people see someone live, that they sort of, I think their brain sort of makes things into what it wants to. They think like, well, she looks like a chick, and she has kind of a low voice, so I guess she's just a chick with a low voice, and they just sort of like make it work.
Hi, I'm Dawn Erickson. I go to NYU. I'm a first-year student here. I live in Rubin Hall. If I could do anything I wanted to do, I would love to be a rock star and sing and play guitar in a band. But more practically, I guess, for majoring in something in college, I'd like to major in music and new media, and hopefully include gender and sexuality studies. I hadn't really had enough time to think about my whole gender identity quest, as I've been calling it, until I got to college. I had just been put in female housing because that's like what's on my driver's license, my birth certificate, and that's like what you would call my assigned sex or assigned gender. but I have come to the conclusion that I now identify as transgender and more on the masculine side of the gender spectrum. And being in male housing would make me feel more comfortable because I do not identify as being female, and I go by male pronouns and identify as like transmasculine, transgender. I was in a band in high school. It was an all-girl band. Of course, I kind of messed that one up, didn't I? I guess I haven't really thought too much about whether I feel better now that people are calling me by male pronouns. It still takes a little bit of getting used to, since for 19 years people have called me she. And though she doesn't fit, I'm still getting a little bit used to he. My mom thinks I'm making a big mistake in saying that I want to transition. She has been less than accepting so far. I feel like she has tried before in being accepting, and that she will hopefully get there. I couldn't not tell her that I wanted to do these things though, especially whereas I would love to get hormones and surgery this summer. I don't want to be 20 and not like who I am physically, and not feel that my way of living and my personality is totally out of sync with my body.
Do I look all right? I guess it's too late to ask that question. I'm Pauline Park, and I am chair of the New York Association for Gender Rights Advocacy. Niagara is the first statewide transgender advocacy organization in New York. I personally identify as an openly transgendered woman, but as part of a larger lesbian, gay, bisexual, transgender community. When people think about the provision of health care for transgender and gender-variant people, usually they focus on procedures that relate to gender transition. In other words, accessing hormone replacement therapy, sex reassignment surgery. And those are very important issues for the community, particularly with SRS, which can be very expensive, prohibitively expensive for most transgender people. But really, the biggest problems facing transgender people who are trying to access health care really are the challenge of accessing the 1,001 other procedures and services that we all need. That's right.
Well, healthcare is a human right. We all need healthcare, and I think in the abstract we all believe everybody deserves to get healthcare. The truth is, in our country right now, that's just not the case.